morning. I'm Nikki, the obsessive bookseller, and welcome to our final Sunday Shelfie. We've been running this since December, and I want to say thank you to everybody who has stuck along for the whole journey. Thank you so much for your support and comments, and a lot of fun dialogue about some of the cool books that we've discovered during this process. Today is going to be a little bit of a hodgepodge. We're going through my nonfiction stuff, my mystery collection, and then my husband's section, which a couple of you have asked about. So for the last time of this tour, let's go look at some books. Okay, this is the section we're looking at today. As you can see on the top there, I've got a whole bunch of giant nature books that need a better home than that. And then we'll also swing over and go through the bottom two shelves there, my husband's stuff. Now, this is a lot of mystery, and these were my grandmother's books. They're very special to me, and I'm hopeful that one day I'll be in the mood to start reading mysteries, but I can't really speak to very much about each one of them, so I imagine this tour might go a little more quickly than usual. First thing I'm going to do, though, is bring down those massive nature books, and we'll start with those. Okay, let's start with this Wildlife Fact File. It was one of those monthly subscriptions where you'd get a new couple of information books every month, little pamphlets, and they gave you something you could collect them all in, which is kind of cool. Now, I didn't collect these myself. These were actually my half-sisters, and I didn't see her very often, but she saw me looking at them, decided that she maybe didn't want them anymore, and gave them to me, and I have treasured them ever since. So that was one of the coolest gifts I've ever received. And I love these. I used to go through and read them all the time and recreate them with my own drawings. Yeah. So these are pretty cool. My son is really into stuff like this right now. He loves nature books, but these are a little too delicate for a 5-year-old, so we're waiting a couple years on that. So stuff like this, and then over in that corner, I've got some zoo books. Those two things really sparked my love for animal encyclopedias. And then my mom bought me this at a book fair, and I have treasured it ever since. I think it is the coolest thing. The neatest thing about this book is that it's so old that we've found out new things about a lot of these creatures, so some of the stuff is outdated, and I think that's cool. I love how science is constantly advancing with our knowledge, but anyway, so I love that one. And then Barnes & Noble has a lot of what we call bargain books, where we have these giant coffee table books that are relatively inexpensive, usually under 20 bucks. So I bought a couple of these. I love big cats. So I like that one. This Smithsonian Guide. This is probably one of the heaviest books I own. It's massive. It's got kind of a rainbow colored edges. All sorts of cool stuff in here. I love animals. If it had been a practical route for my life, I probably would have been a zoologist major. But I went the bookstore route instead. I went for my MBA. Massive book of mammals. This one's probably my favorite single book in the collection. And yeah, it is really cool. Now, for the record, I'm aware that I have way too many of these. I think this one is neat also, but it's probably one that can go, because if I were to pick up one of these encyclopedias on random, I wouldn't pick this one. And I probably wouldn't pick this one either. He's cute. So now that I've hung on to these for so long, these will probably go to my son, start his collection. a tiny little book because regardless of the subject, I love tiny little books. This one has mostly illustrations though. I think I prefer the ones with actual pictures. Another big cat collection. Also a bargain book. I think between this one and the other one, I prefer the other one. It's funny, we're not supposed to be decluttering right now, but I'm getting some ideas. And then I have no idea where I picked this one up. Meh, I can take it or leave it. Anyway, so pretty good stacks. Okay, this starts the beginning of the collection that I got from my grandmother. She was always a big reader. She really did love these mystery books. She had a fair few of paperbacks. I only kept a couple because Susan Whitting Albert was her favorite. So if and when I start reading through these mysteries, I'm probably going to start with this author because she liked her so much. We have the Aunt Demitty series by Nancy Atherton. What I know about most of these books is how well they sold in the bookstore and which ones my grandma liked. So she never mentioned this one, and we did not sell too terribly many of them. Susan Whitting Albert, we sold a fair few. I'd say it was like lower medium in sales. And I'm not saying sales can always tell you whether or not something is good, but generally, especially with the mystery crowd, it seems like they're pretty prolific readers and they tend to come back for more on the authors that are really good. More Aunt Demitty. C.J. Box, pretty popular. My mom actually likes this author quite a bit. I have a random art here. And my grandmother had 2 copies of this one, which is kind of fun. She's like me. She just kept buying books and then ended up with 2. So there's those. And one of the few mysteries I have actually read, Lillian Jackson Braun wrote the Cat Who series. And those are actually really cute. Read The Cat Who Could Read Backwards. This is, I think, the only one I've done. But as you can see, there are a whole bunch of them. And they're really short, too. Super cute. Then we have the Rita Mae Brown, also cats. There's a theme, by the way. It's either cooking, cats, or crafting that make up a lot of these little cozy mysteries. And that's not a general rule, but there are a lot of themes. Move this plant. Coming up here, and then we have Laura Childs. She sold pretty well. I actually like the look of the spines. Sorry, we've got this massive plant in the way. I like these spines better than a lot of them, so I'm feeling kind of drawn to these, even though I have no idea if they're any good. I have a couple of Diane Mott Davidsons out of order, but there they are. And then a couple by Ellen Crosby. I don't think I ever sold any of those in the bookstore, but Grandma's got a lot of them, so she must have liked them. And then Diane Mott Davidson, she sold a lot. This is one of the cooking theme ones. I remember people asking for her and coming in for the new titles, so that's kind of cool. And we have a Cliff Janeway novel. I think it's a trilogy. Don't quote me on that. It's just because I have 3 of them. Shaman's Game by James Dosh. Arlene Fowler, The Saddleman's Wife. I actually thought I had more Fowler books than that, but I think I just remember selling a whole bunch of them at the bookstore, but my grandma only had 1. And here she has, I think these are book club editions, but the original hardcovers by Sue Grafton, who, one of the more famous mystery authors who wrote the Alphabet Mystery series. And that's kind of a commitment that you always think would be fun when you start out as a writer and then realize as you get further along that, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to finish this thing. So my grandma had Up to You, and I think since then the series has been completed. And I hear they are quite fun. So I will probably get to those at some point also. It's a commitment as a reader as well. Then we have the Bones series by Carolyn Haynes. One that my grandma obviously liked, but I didn't really sell too many of them. Oh yeah, okay. Thought these were two different series, but it looks like they just had like a cover change. And then the ones that I am personally most interested in are these Tony Hillerman ones. He sold like hotcakes, probably because he's a Western mystery combo, and I think it focuses on Native American culture in the Southwest, and I just think it is really rad, so I'd be interested in that one. J.A. Jance is also one of the massively popular ones. So if nothing else, I hope they're pretty good quality. And then my grandma has a ton of Anne Perry. Decently popular author, but I have to say I am not interested in reading them whatsoever at this point. And then these are so cute. Maggie Sefton's The Knitting Mysteries. I feel like these would be really good beach reads. And then another one of my grandma's all-time favorites is Kate Wilhelm. I haven't read anything from her. I didn't get a lot of customer feedback, but I gave a few of the paperbacks to a friend, and she read one of them and said she really liked them. So looking forward to those as well. And that marks the end of the mystery stuff. Now, the ultimate goal for my Read, Burn, Hoard project is to find room for all of these on one of my top shelves so that I can get rid of these smaller shelves and put in a comfy chair right here. Because I think these would fit perfectly across the top of all that, especially if I let go of maybe the ones that I'm not super interested in reading. I don't think my grandma would want me to hang on to stuff that I'm not using and enjoying. But I love that she let me have these. They're very special to me. Okay, this is my random nonfiction section. Recently, within the last year, I bought Joy at Work by Marie Kondo on bargain, and didn't have anywhere to put it. Couldn't fit it above because I have books up there, couldn't fit it in, so just stuck it in front. But my library just got an audio version of this last week, so it's kind of an ironic timing, but I will be probably reading this within the next month. And then I have a few Utah hiking books, which were either gifted to me or my husband brought into the relationship. And I prefer this app called Trail Finder. I think it's a lot more in depth and shows some of the even smaller trails because we have done a lot of the bigger ones around here. But I guess the benefit of having the book is if you're in a place where you don't have a lot of service, you can still figure out where you're going in some of the more, unexplored areas. We know where we're at around here, but over in like Moab and stuff, where the Arches hikes are and everything, those could come in handy, I suppose. Yet another hiking guide, which I would be surprised if there was a trail in Zion that I didn't know about because it's so close and I've been there so often. I've even done a little bit of off-trail hiking there, but you never know. This is rad. So this is called Utah Sport Climbing, Stories and Reflections on the Bolting of the Beehive State. And this was written by my ex-husband, who was into climbing and loved it before I ever got into it. And then when we divorced, I started getting into rock climbing, which is the biggest irony. I helped him transcribe a lot of the interviews that were in this book. And when I started getting into the climbing, knowing those stories ahead of time when I visited a lot of these places was so, so cool. He's a beautiful literary writer, and he's a photographer. He did all the pictures in this for himself as well. So, yeah, very proud of him for this work, and really glad to have a copy on the shelf. Now, the funniest thing, if you've been following the series, I do not have a signed copy. Yeah, that's funny. Love that. A little astronomy book I bought when I was in college for probably one of my favorite of all time college courses. I love learning about the stars. I've retained a little bit of the physics now. The Language of Letting Go by Melody Beattie. Meditations on Codependency. I've read a couple of books by this author, and it's really good at teaching you how to find validation within yourself as opposed to other people. But I love the other books she wrote, Codependency No More and Beyond Codependency, are decent reads, but it's these daily meditation things that I thought were the most helpful because they weren't overly preachy. And I think a lot of the wisdom in here is applicable whether or not you've got codependent tendencies or not. So yeah, really like this book. It kind of took me off guard how much I liked it. I used a lot of the quotes in there on a photo project that I have going, which is a story for another day. Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. Part of my brief exploration into Buddhism, which I still appreciate to this day. And this was, yeah, cool read. Barnes & Noble always had these little coffee table books. The Blue Day book is hysterical. One of the cutest ones I've read, and one called Furry Logic, Parenthood, and then just the basic Furry Logic stuff. These are really cute. These make really good gifts. Highly recommend that. And then this is Ultimate Shame for Me. This is such a cool book. It gives writing prompts and really helps get your creative mind flowing if you're an aspiring writer. A friend and I borrowed this from another friend. My other friend had it for a full year and then finally gave it to me. And I have had it for several years because I haven't seen the friend we initially borrowed it from for quite a while. And I feel so bad because if I lent a book to someone and they didn't give it back, we're done. Don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff. My mom bought me this book when I was a kid, like a teen, because I had anxiety when I was a teen, and some of the mantras in here, really good little bits of wisdom. This is also one of the ones that sold pretty well at the bookstore. I can't say as though I treated it as a Bible, but some of the things in here are wisdom you can take with yourself, even if you don't have anxiety. Another one my mom bought me when I was in high school. It's called Boys Will Put You on a Pedestal So They Can Look Up Your Skirt. Subtitled A Dad's Advice for Daughters. I really like this book. It's girl empowerment and just taking care of yourself even when you get swept up in crushes and all of that. I just think it's a very thoughtful read and a cute way to learn how to maybe maintain some boundaries. 642 Tiny Things to Write About. This is blank, but I used it quite a bit. I did some writing prompts on my blog, and I didn't want to write in my book at the time. Oh no, we can't do that. But I would take the prompts and then write it digitally. That was a really cute project for a while. Okay, now we get into, I love random trivia. And we always had a whole bunch of variety of books of trivia, including Why Do Men Have Nipples? Hundreds of questions you'd only ask a doctor after your third martini. There's a lot of weird knowledge in here, but I swear a lot of it has come in handy on trivia games. Can poppy seeds make you test positive for heroin? Why is it bad to insert cotton swabs in your ears? I'm not reading that one. Yeah, just funny stuff. I really like that book. And then in that same vein, who knew? Things you didn't know about, just tiny little tidbits, random facts. I thought they were fun. I amused myself by writing them on the mirror that I shared with my roommate in college, and I do not think she appreciated the random knowledge as much as I did. Living Among Free-Range Humans, a collection of humor of the species. Sharon May. This teacher was my earliest writing mentor. I had her for English a couple of years in high school, and all of the writing that I'm doing today, I can trace back to her sparking that love for telling stories. And she wrote a column for my local newspaper, and then eventually got them all published into this book. And they are just awesome. So cute. And so I really appreciate her for giving me all of the foundation that I needed to do what I'm doing now, because I wouldn't be on BookTube if I hadn't felt confident enough to start a blog and have been writing on there for years. I think I got this book from my grandma as well. This is Cat Stories. James Herriot is a really famous animal literary writer. I kept that one. This book, Marley and Me, I read it way before the movie came out. I didn't care for the movie, but I love this edition. It is the special edition, and it had family photos in it of Marley. So I'm really glad I have this. Now, anytime you read a book about a dog, you're going to have your heart broken, which I did. I love that the book was written by a writer who took the approach of showing how to celebrate life and appreciate the small things through some of the fun things that happened with his dog. And just to peek into what kind of books I collected for nonfiction before I started getting into a lot of these productivity ones, yeah, the rest of what we have to look at are nature, so brace yourself. Most of these I haven't read. I picked up Wolves at Our Door, Extraordinary Story of the Couple Who Lived with Wolves. Like, okay, that sounds like fun. You can read that. Becoming a Tiger, How Baby Animals Learn to Live in the Wild. Now, I've probably watched so many nature documentaries by this point that there's not going to be a lot of new information in there, but I thought it was cool. Zoo Story, Life and Death in the Garden of Captives. That one looks like a real pick-me-up. Wildlife Warrior, kind of a tribute to Steve Irwin with a lot of pictures and kind of detailing what he did with his life. Okay, and then we get to the bottom shelf with probably one of the coolest books that I own. This massive tome, illustrated edition of The Origin of Species, which I don't know if I'm ever going to make time to actually read this. I kind of already know the gist of Darwin's work, but the fact that it's illustrated is a really cool copy. So my middle school library had a couple of sales on books that they'd had forever, so I picked up The Marvels of Animal Behavior, this really random old crusty book. And I also picked up this amazingly beat up copy of Living Free by Joy Adamson. I did not realize that this is a second book. The first book is called Born Free, which most people have heard of, about the lion Elsa. But wouldn't you know it, middle school, I didn't have a lot to read back then. Oh, look, I had a note from a friend stuffed in there. And it had pictures. I actually read this entire thing. Animorphs! Yeah, cover to cover. And it's hard to describe, but this book smells like an old library. Just pulling it out, I can smell it. But I just think it's kind of cool. Okay, of what's left, I'm going to pull out what I've read. Bad Dogs Have More Fun. Same author that wrote Marley and Me. These are stories from other people's animals, which is kind of fun. They were cute. I think I made it about halfway through it before realizing that short stories really don't sing to me. But Through Animals' Eyes, again, Stories of Wildlife Rescue. The Daily Coyote. Stories of Love, Survival, and Trust in the Wilds of Wyoming. No idea what that's about, but it was cute. A Beast in the Garden. The true story of a predator's deadly return to suburban America. I always find this interesting when nature and humanity combines. And I think it's a nonfiction, but kind of written in a way that's supposed to be like, ooh, what's going to happen? It's a mystery. Now, we have a lot of puma around where I live. I know someone saw some tracks, like, I don't know, a quarter mile into the wilderness back behind my house. So we ain't joking. Seen one in a couple of the neighborhoods I've lived in. Inside Animals' Minds. This is just a random National Geographic magazine that I held on to. Alex and Me, kind of an exploration of Animal Intelligence. This was an ARC. And you know me, I like animal books, so snagged it. I love marine life, specifically killer whales, but I like dolphins as well. So this story looked kind of cool, Behind the Dolphin's Smile. Such smart animals. And then Freeing Kiko, what we know about killer whales' familial structures now may have prevented what happened to this poor animal, but it was just an interesting story. People trying to do the right thing, but going about it in the wrong way. So I started reading this, didn't get very far. I picked it up when I was really young. And I've got that. And then I mentioned James Herriot. He's most famous for All Creatures Great and Small. And we had a couple of these books on bargain, these cool compilations, so I thought I'd pick them up. I am so fascinated with sharks. This one's called The Devil's Teeth. It says, Survival and Obsession Among America's Great White Sharks. And this book came out before they've done a lot of really in-depth research. I saw a couple of documentaries that came out maybe 5 or 6 years after this. There was one with Paul Walker that was really good, where they were trying to tag white sharks. But we know a lot more now than we did then. And so this book might be a little obsolete, but I do love learning about stuff like that. Obviously not enough to actually have read any of these. Merle's Door. This might be a rescue dog. They kind of detail the stories, but I think not totally positive about that. It sold pretty well. And then Dewey! It's a library cat. He's got a cool story, and that's all I know about him. But every time I saw this book, the name and the cover just made me so happy. And I'm not even much of a cat person anymore, but I had to bring that home. Edward Abbey's Desert Solitaire. This is probably the pinnacle of literary nature writing. And I have read a few chapters into it, but I have not finished this book. This was a gift from someone. And yeah, we'll hopefully get to that eventually. My nonfiction these days is going more towards productivity and organization, but eventually I would like to pick up some of these that I've hung on to. The Structure of Evolutionary Theory. This massive tome. And I'm like, oh yeah, let me just pick up this Harvard Press tome here on a rainy day and see how far I can get. I will never read that, but I think it is so cool. And finally, I have these zoo books, which were absolute life when I was a kid. I used to be so offended, like we'd get some cool stuff and then suddenly we'd get a bug book like spiders. Like, no! Butterflies was okay, we could handle that. But see, insects. I don't want insects. I want, like, polar bears. There we go, camels. We can do that. So anyway, I love these. I had a friend who had the entire zoo book collection, and I was so jealous. Because those were beautiful books and really sparked my love for animals, which in turn probably sparked my love for reading, because I love these animal books so much, and then found the Animorph series where kids change into animals, and the rest is history from there. And a Merriam-Webster dictionary, the Garfield edition, which is so cute. Ask me how many times I've picked up an actual dictionary over the last 10 years instead of looking at my phone. Yeah, it's 0, but I've got the Garfield edition, so I can't let that go. So did that feel like a hodgepodge? Describing all of those felt like a hodgepodge. And if I were to actually be buying all of the nonfiction books right now that are really singing to me, that I'm loving, this section would look a little bit different. In fact, it's one of my goals to start buying more of the nonfiction books that I really liked, because I will actually highlight and reference them. Anyway, moving on. My husband and I have been together for kind of approaching 3 years now, and he got really into the book hunting with me when I've done my recent bookstore treks. And so between some of the things he's been collecting and me buying him books that he's interested in, he has started his own little collection here, which I love. One of the goals of my downsizing is to make more room for his stuff as well, so should be cool. Anyway, he was interested in fantasy and reading because of Game of Thrones and Witcher. So the first book he bought himself was this hardcover of The Witcher, and then proceeded to lament that the rest of the series wasn't available in hardcover. And I'm like, I feel you, man, because that kind of stuff happens to readers all the time. And then for Christmas, I got him the editions that I really liked of these. I actually will probably give these a go at some point. So we've got those. One of my favorite movie adaptations of all time was what they did with Ender's Game. They took everything I loved about the book, put it in the movie, and then the thing I hated about the book they fixed in the movie, so way to go there. And I hear the Shadow series is even better, so these are some of the ones he collected on our used bookstore trek. And then a book that I am not interested in at all. Sorry to all you Poe fans, but he found this cool compilation, leather-bound Edgar Allan Poe series. Now, he really loves Cthulhu, so he bought this beautiful Cthulhu book and has read, quite a few of the short stories there. This was a cool edition. He hunted down and found that one and liked that it was blue. Then in one of the random stores I was in, they had a 3 for $20 thing. And I was already interested in reading this book, but we needed one more to make 20. So he got that one. This is on my list as well. And then he went through quite the hunt to find books by Arthur C. Clarke. So got 2001: A Space Odyssey that he found in relatively decent condition considering the age and the popularity of it. And he bought the Rama series, found Rendezvous with Rama, and read that one and really enjoyed it. Made it a little ways into the second book, but then put it down for a few other things. We've got a pretty killer Arthur C. Clarke section going over here. Okay, more Orson Scott Card that I got him for Christmas, because I guess chronologically those come first. And then this. It's the illustrated edition of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. I got it for him for Christmas, and let's be 100% real, this is more a gift for me than him. These books are absolutely beautiful, and I've been eyeballing them at the bookstore for ages and finally decided to pick one up. And I should have bought it back in the bookstore when I had employee discount and they were available at retail, because I paid way too much for them. Anyway, during our last Salt Lake City trek, he found a whole bunch of the new Jedi Order Star Wars books, and he's recently read Homeland by R.A. Salvatore, but I think he picked that up before he had started that book. But he just remembered me talking about them. Oh, and Kevin Hearn, I've read him. So anyway, this starts his collection, and I am just getting into Star Wars as well. I kind of started my own project independently. Due to a video out recently by Mike's Book Reviews, I have a lot better idea of where I want to go with the Star Wars universe. So I'm starting back with the Han Solo trilogy, and it's probably going to take me years to get to the point where I want to read these, even though I'm really interested in them. But that's motivation, Got a lot of books to do first, but the ones you're working up towards are going to be pretty rad. Anyway, that is his collection so far. Not bad. Thank you so much for joining me on what felt like a really random tour. I've really enjoyed taking you through my entire collection over the last several months. This is a series I'd like to bring back at some point, maybe like 5 years from now when a whole bunch of things have changed. But for now, this is like a little time capsule, and it was so much fun to put together. And now I don't have to worry about if Goodreads loses my information on all of the books I have shelved, because I have visual data here of the books that I have in my collection, and that's kind of a cool thing. So thank you again for watching, and I hope to catch you next time. Bye.